They do the dirty work. They take the most hits and their careers are the shortest. All of that, and they don't get paid. NFL running backs have gone from the stars of the game to interchangeable cogs in the offense, used like cheap whores until they're worn out, then discarded to the streets. It's a sad reality, but it somehow makes sense. The data reveals that giving a running back a second contract typically does not pay off, and yet many teams still do it. Today we're taking a deep dive into whether or not paying running backs is stupid, and if the most recent big payday was the right move. It's all coming up right after this. How is it that 9 out of 10 dentists agree that you should not pay a running back big money and teams still make the mistake? And how is it that Bill O'Brien is still employed? Is it that NFL teams find running backs more endearing because of the grind they put their body through? The great moves they make? The aerial wonders when they leap across the goal line? Perhaps they've tricked themselves into thinking that because there may be a dip in their team's production after letting a running back walk, that it will hinder the squad. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. Let's look at the last 3 Super Bowl victors and their leading rushers. The Kansas City Chiefs gave just 111 carries to their de facto lead back, Damian Williams, who was making just $1.7 million to tote the rock. That $1.7 million bought the Chiefs 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl in what was arguably an MVP performance had we never seen anyone throw a football prior to Patrick Mahomes touching one. All that production from a guy they got off the street after Kareem Hunt's kicking tryout. A year later, the Patriots rode Sony Michel to a dominant playoff performance that included 336 yards and 6 total touchdowns, including the one that iced the Super Bowl. Michel, while still a questionable first-round pick, was making just $2.4 million. Prior to that, the Eagles' leading rusher was LeGarrette Blount, who was part of a 1-2 punch with Jay Ajayi. Blount was signed as a free agent by the Eagles for just $1.25 million on a 1-year deal. None of these teams relied on a workhorse running back. Instead, they went running back by committee and allocated their resources to either paying a quarterback, taking advantage of a quarterback on a rookie deal, and spending on other positions, like quarterback. Teams that break out the checkbook for a running back almost always regret it, with a few exceptions. Let's go down the list and look at the highest paid running backs in the NFL as of 2020 and find out whether paying workhorses has a payoff. Christian McCaffrey became the highest paid RB ever, and he's who we'll explore later on. Elliott's rushing yards, receiving yards, yards per carry, and receptions all dipped after signing a 6-year, $90 million extension with Dallas. That got them an 8-8 season and a cap situation where they're struggling to re-sign their star quarterback. Would the Cowboys have still felt obligated to pay him that much or at all if they hadn't spent a top 5 pick on Elliott? Gurley's lack of durability caused by arthritis combined with his massive hit towards the Rams' debacle of a cap situation meant that LA had to release Gurley with 3 years left on his deal. In 2020, the Rams will spend $17 million, 8.5% of their cap, for Gurley to run the ball for the Falcons. Bell held out a whole year in Pittsburgh to get less money with an inferior team. He only ran for 789 yards, 3 touchdowns, and added just 461 yards in the passing game to go with 1 receiving score. Those were all his lowest marks since 2015 when he missed 10 games.
He's under contract for 3 more years. You can ask Joe tomorrow.
He also had 1 terrible album. Fantasy football players will tell you that David Johnson is not worth the money. He's run for just 1,285 yards and racked up 816 receiving yards in the 2 years since he signed his big deal. Somehow for Arizona, this massive mistake turned into an unbelievable stroke of luck when it netted them DeAndre Hopkins. That and the aneurysm Bill O'Brien suffered at the start of free agency. What a f***ing hack. The proof is in the pocketbook. Shelling out second contracts to running backs that generally run their course after 3 or 4 years absolutely does not pay off in the long run. You have to go back pretty far to find a second contract for a running back that aged well. In fact, you'll have to head back to a half man, half beast, half Skittles ambassador to find a contract given out that not only didn't precede a drop in production but correlated with the team's overall success. Obviously, I'm talking about Marshawn Lynch, whom the Seattle Seahawks rewarded a 4-year, $31 million contract after the 2011 season, as Lynch's rookie deal and 5th-year option expired. From 2012 through 2015, Lynch rushed for over 4,000 yards and scored 43 touchdowns over the first 3 years of the contract, earning a Pro Bowl bid each season. The extension also coincided with back-to-back Super Bowl appearances for the Seahawks and 1 victory. 2 if they just gave him the damn ball. It's important to keep in mind that the Lynch contract was possible because Russell Wilson was a rookie drafted in the 3rd round, making roughly $600,000 a year as opposed to the $35 million he made in the 2019 season when Marshawn Lynch joined the team late for a fee of just $60,588. My, how the turntables rotate. This is an exception that proves the rule. If your running back isn't walking to Canton one day, you should probably let him walk in free agency if he's asking for big money. The other Hall of Fame running back from Lynch's era, Adrian Peterson, signed a 6-year, $82 million extension with the Vikings prior to the 2011 season. Peterson had one of the most dominant seasons in NFL history 2 years into the contract, rushing for 2,097 yards and dragging the Minnesota Vikings to the playoffs. But Peterson also ran for 75 yards in 2014 and 72 yards in 2016, 2 seasons where he was making $10 and $12 million, respectively. You can see that even when a running back produces in their second contract, the dangerous lack of durability at that position can turn even a Hall of Famer like Peterson into dead money. Well, that and don't beat up your kids. Finally, let's circle back to something I brought up earlier, a player who might be able to buck the trend, a player who just became the highest paid running back in NFL history. That's Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, the guy with the complexion of Philip Seymour Hoffman is the richest running back to ever play the game. Just recently, the Panthers extended McCaffrey to the tune of 4 years, $64 million, half of which was guaranteed. So why is McCaffrey the guy to reverse the trend, or at least prove to be an exception? Well, to put it simply, McCaffrey is the offense in Carolina. In 2019, a season in which Cam Newton was absent due to injury, McCaffrey picked up the slack as a runner and a receiver. The 3rd-year back ran for 1,387 yards, caught an astounding 116 passes for 1,005 yards, and found the end zone 19 times. That was 12 more touchdowns than anyone else on the Panthers, over half of their total offensive touchdowns. The last player to pass 1,000 yards rushing and receiving in the same season was Marshall Faulk in 1999. Faulk's second contract also aged pretty well, despite the fact that it lasted 7 whole years. When a player like McCaffrey, Faulk, or someone like Roger Craig is so indispensable to a team in both the run game and the passing game, it actually makes sense to allocate a bigger portion of the cap to that kind of back. However, those tend to be the more agile backs as opposed to the power runners who take a greater beating between the tackles. And that doesn't mean McCaffrey's deal is a cinch to age well. Far from it, but the Panthers were careful to only make about half of the deal guaranteed, and they're not paying an exorbitant amount of money to anyone else on the offense for a couple more years. Pair that with the departure of Luke Kuechly and Cam Newton, and it makes sense to invest that money in a player the fans can get behind. Still, McCaffrey is a unicorn, and players like Adrian Peterson and Marshawn Lynch are walking Hall of Famers. Sorry, but guys like David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, and Devonta Freeman are not. So the lesson today is, do not pay your running backs unless they're doing more than just running. Bill O'Brien, take notes. Yeah, right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Please do not forget to subscribe for sports facts and bad jokes. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to my next video.